I found out my family was celebrating my parents' anniversary the same way people find out their ex got married. Through social media, completely by accident. While holding a cup of coffee, I suddenly didn't want any more. It was 3 in the afternoon, and I was behind the pastry counter at my restaurant, Maison Lucille. A woman in a navy blazer leaned over to film her lemon tart for Instagram, and for half a second, her screen reflected the gold article frame on the wall. Chef Savannah, the quiet force behind LA's coziest bistro. Nice ego boost until I saw what she was actually posting. There, shining on her phone, was my sister's Instagram story, counting down to mom and dad's 35th tonight. Love like theirs, family only dinner. Family only. At first, I thought it was some old throwback. Then I saw the timestamp. Posted 10 minutes ago. The espresso machine hissed behind me like it was judging my life choices. I refreshed the story. There it was again. Their living room bathed in golden light, a fancy table setting, little place cards in Vanessa's perfect handwriting. I counted them like an auditor. One for mom, one for dad, one for Vanessa, one for her husband Trevor, and 2 more, Aunt Lila and Uncle Nate. 6. No Savannah. I didn't even get a pity name card. Not even a last minute, maybe she'll show up fork. Laura, my pastry chef and part-time emotional support human, noticed my face. You're doing that murder stare again. Should I call the police or bring chocolate? Chocolate, I said. Maybe the 70%. Murder is off the menu today. She peeked at my phone. Oh, the family's doing something fancy? Apparently. Family-only dinner for my parents' anniversary. And I'm family adjacent, I guess. Laura frowned. Wait, they didn't invite you? My mother doesn't forget anything. She still remembers the serial number on her first blender. If she didn't invite me, it's because she didn't want to. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. It was Vanessa. Perfect timing, as always. Vanessa. Hey, Sav, quick question. What's a good ratio for vinaigrette again? Me. 3-1. Vanessa. You're the best. Love you. I stared at that message for a long time. She loved me, but only when she needed to know how much oil to whisk into her privilege. I typed, have fun tonight. Deleted it. Then, thanks for the invite. Deleted that too. Silence would do. Silence has better posture. When my parents used to say, you're always working, it sounded almost affectionate, like they admired my ambition. Somewhere between my first sous chef job and the day I opened my own place, it turned into a complaint. You're always working became code for you're not here for us. And somehow Vanessa, who married a real estate guy who calls sparkling wine bubbly, became the family's new event planner, social manager, and apparently gatekeeper to who counts as family. By the time I closed the restaurant that evening, I was simmering on low heat. Not angry enough to explode, just marinating. I drove to my parents' house under the soft LA dusk, still telling myself I'd imagined it. Maybe they forgot. Maybe there was a surprise. Maybe I was overreacting. But when I pulled up and saw the glowing windows, the sound of laughter spilling onto the street, and the smell of roasted chicken, reality came out of the oven, perfectly done. Sav? Mom's voice floated from the hallway when I stepped inside. We weren't expecting you, sweetheart. Did you bring leftovers? I held up a box. Brought your cake stand back. Half-truths are still polite. The dining room looked like a Pinterest board for middle-aged love. White roses, gold cutlery, vanilla candles. Vanessa stood at the table, folding napkins into little tuxedos like she was auditioning for Martha Stewart's evil twin. Sav, she squealed, running over to air kiss me. You look very chefy. Flower on your sleeve, love it. Thanks, I said. You look very organized. Dad wandered in, fixing cufflinks he didn't need. Peanut, you stopping by between shifts? Wild guess, I said. You're eating tonight, right? He laughed, missing the sarcasm entirely. Vanessa grinned. We just wanted something small this year. Family only. And we figured you're always busy during dinner hours. Right, I interrupted, smiling. I mean, who would want a professional chef at their dinner party? Tragic, really. Mom patted my arm. Oh, don't take it that way, honey. You know how crazy your schedule is. We wanted to give you a break for once. A break? From what? Being the only one in the family with a job that doesn't involve Excel or emotional blackmail? I spotted the fridge open behind her, full of containers labeled in Vanessa's handwriting. Kale Caesar, lemon chicken, garlic potatoes, all my mom's favorites, all things I'd taught Vanessa how to make. They hadn't just excluded me, they'd used my recipes. I smiled so wide it almost hurt. Looks like a beautiful dinner, I said. Need any help? Oh no, Vanessa chirped. I've got everything under control. Of course you do, I said. And for the first time that night, it wasn't sarcasm. It was foreshadowing. As I set down the cake stand and turned to leave, I paused. Hey, by the way, what are you all doing for Thanksgiving? Mom sighed. Oh, same thing as always. Turkey, stuffing. You know your father. He refuses to experiment. Dinner at Mom and Dad's. Vanessa added proudly. I'm project managing the pies. I nodded, calm and smiling, even though inside me something clicked. Not like a spark, more like a switch. Perfect, I said. I'll see you then. They waved, clueless and glowing under the chandelier, while I walked back to my car and let the door close behind me. Halfway home, Aunt Lila texted, Can't wait to see you tonight. I told your mom your restaurant is doing so well. I stared at it for a long time, then replied, Same here, Aunt Lila. Save room for stories. By the time I got back to the restaurant, the kitchen was quiet, warm, and safe. My kind of church. I tied my apron, took a deep breath, and stared at the reflection in the hanging heat lamps. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was too small for this. This was focus. Precision. Laura peeked from the prep area. So, heartbreak or homicide? Neither, I said, reaching for my notebook. Menu development. For what? For Thanksgiving. She grinned. Oh God, should I be scared? Not at all, I said, flipping a page and writing in bold letters. Thanksgiving, private pop-up, everyone invited. Then smaller underneath, everyone but them. I tapped the pen against the counter, feeling a strange kind of peace. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's plated on fine china, served warm, and garnished with irony. This year, Thanksgiving was going to be delicious. And so, as you've probably figured out by now, my name's Savannah, I'm 32, and I've been the backup child since about age 8. You know the type. The one who exists mostly as family PR material when she succeeds, or emotional duct tape when her older sister screws up. If Vanessa forgot her lines in the school play, I was the adorable understudy. If she bombed a math test, I was paraded around for getting an A. Parents love balance. It makes them feel democratic. I think my parents love me. Probably. Maybe. I don't really know. I stopped trying to figure it out somewhere between, we're proud of you, sweetie, and we can't make it tonight. We're helping your sister move. At some point, I just accepted that they had limited hours in the day, and I was always scheduled for later. That's how my love affair with the kitchen began. When Mom forgot to pack my lunch, oh, I thought you ate at school, honey. I learned to improvise. When I got home late from piano lessons and found the casserole dish already scraped clean, because Vanessa was starving, poor thing, I discovered that hunger is a creative fuel. My first real meal was peanut butter noodles, which, fun fact, I made on a Tuesday night at age 9 with a plastic fork and 0 adult supervision. Vanessa had polished off the leftover mac and cheese. Mom clapped her hands. What a healthy appetite! And Dad laughed like it was adorable that his older daughter could inhale carbs like a Dyson. No one noticed me standing by the fridge, holding an empty bowl and doing long division with my feelings. So I did what I've done ever since. I handled it myself. Boiled some noodles, stole a tablespoon of peanut butter, added soy sauce because the label said for flavor, and ate standing up. It was salty, weirdly sweet, and tasted like freedom. That was my first kitchen victory, born of starvation and mild resentment. By middle school, the pattern was set. Vanessa was the bright one, the beautiful one, the born leader. I was the one who doesn't complain. Mom called me our little helper. Dad called me steady as a rock. Both of which sound like compliments until you realize rocks don't get invited to family dinners either. One day at breakfast, Mom was flipping pancakes for Vanessa. Perfectly round, golden, Instagram ready before Instagram existed. I got the one that broke in half. Vanessa giggled. Yours looks like Florida. Dad said, That's still the Sunshine State, kiddo. I stared at my deformed pancake and decided I was never eating Florida again. I started experimenting. If I had to feed myself, I'd do it right. By 12, I could poach an egg without a timer. By 14, I could tell by smell when cookies were 2 minutes from burning. By 15, I realized cooking wasn't just feeding, it was control. It was the one place in the world where if you added the right ingredients in the right order, things turned out exactly as you wanted. Unlike my family, dinner scenes were always the same movie on repeat. Mom, Vanessa, darling, tell us about your day. Vanessa, well, my teacher said my project was the most original in class. Dad, that's my girl. Mom, Savannah, did you finish your homework? Me, yeah. Mom, good. End of scene. If sarcasm could be bottled, my house would have smelled like a vintage 1998 Chardonnay. Sometimes I'd try to share something. A new recipe, a funny story, the fact that I'd won a cooking contest at school. Mom would smile distractedly. That's wonderful, honey. Pass the bread to your sister. Vanessa didn't mean to be awful. She just believed in her own main character energy. If I was the supporting cast, she was the poster. The irony? My parents' selective attention gave me a head start. When nobody notices you, you can practice without pressure. By high school, while Vanessa was dating quarterbacks and joining debate club for college apps, I was working part-time at a bakery 3 blocks from home. The owner, Mrs. Lee, was 70 and ruthless. She made me redo croissant dough if it was off by a single gram. When I got it right, she'd say, Good, now do it faster. That woman was the first person who ever treated me like I was capable of more. At 16, she handed me my first paycheck in a wrinkled envelope with $38 inside and said, You'll go far if you stop apologizing for existing. I almost cried right there over the register. My parents, of course, were thrilled. Not about the job and about the discount pastries. Every Saturday night, Mom would swing by the bakery to check on you, honey, and somehow leave with 3 boxes of leftover eclairs. Dad would wink and say, Our little chef's keeping us fed. Meanwhile, I'd come home from 10 hours on my feet to find Vanessa waiting in the kitchen, already eating one of my practice tarts. Do these have nuts? She'd ask, mid-bite. No, I'd say, because she was allergic and I wasn't a monster. Good, she'd reply. They're okay, I guess. Then she'd leave the plate in the sink. That sibling love in the Carr household, passive-aggressive, carb-heavy, and always one-sided. When I started culinary school, I thought maybe finally they'd see me. Mom cried at the acceptance letter. Dad told everyone at church that his daughter was going to be the next Martha Stewart. Vanessa posted a picture of my knives on Instagram with the caption, My sister's living her dream, and somehow got more likes than I did graduating. The support lasted exactly 3 months. Then came the requests. Sav, can you cater Dad's office party? We'll pay for ingredients. Sav, can you bake something gluten-free for Vanessa's bridal shower? Sav, can you make lasagna for Thanksgiving? But, without garlic. Your mom can't stand the smell. Let's pause here for the record. Mom hates beans and garlic. Dad despises olives and mushrooms. Vanessa's allergic to nuts. Try building a menu around that minefield. It's like being asked to compose a symphony with half the instruments removed and still make it sound like Mozart. But I did it. I always did it. Because saying no felt worse than being invisible. I became a master of substitution. Walnuts swapped for toasted seeds, mushrooms replaced with caramelized shallots, garlic omitted, but somehow no one noticed. Every meal a tightrope act between taste and family politics. And guess what? They loved it. Sav, this is divine. Sav, you're a genius. Sav, open your own place someday. They ate, they praised, they left the dishes for me. A perfect family ecosystem. One night during college break, I came home to find Mom hosting her book club. 10 women, 1 Chardonnay bottle, 0 boundaries. She was serving my mini quiches, the ones I'd made for a school project. Oh, these? She laughed when I walked in. Savvy whipped them up before class. She's such a natural. One woman asked, "Where did she learn?" Mom said, "Oh, it runs in the family. My grandmother cooked every Sunday." And just like that, my entire identity got rerouted to a dead woman I'd never met. Later, when everyone left, I confronted her. "Mom, you could have mentioned I made the recipe." She blinked. "Sweetheart, they know that. Don't be so sensitive." I remember thinking, if invisibility were an Olympic sport, I'd have a gold medal and no one would come to the ceremony. But here's the funny thing about being overlooked. It gives you room to evolve. You can reinvent yourself right under everyone's nose. While Vanessa and Mom perfected their suburban social routines, I was learning knife skills sharp enough to slice through expectations. I spent weekends catering small events, then bigger ones, until strangers were paying for the same food my family took for granted. The first time a client sent flowers to the restaurant for my cooking, Mom posted a photo with the caption, "So proud of my daughter's passion for baking." I wasn't a baker, I was a chef. But close enough, right? By 25, I was running a small kitchen team. By 28, I'd opened Maison Lucille, named after Mrs. Lee, who'd believed in me before anyone else did. When the local paper called me a rising culinary voice, Mom framed the article and hung it in her dining room, next to Vanessa's wedding photo. Progress, I suppose. They started introducing me at family gatherings as our chef, which sounds nice until you realize it's shorthand for free catering. Every event had conditions. Sav, no mushrooms, you know your father. Sav, Vanessa can't eat nuts. Sav, no garlic, I'll smell it for days. Cooking for them was like feeding royalty with dietary issues and emotional baggage. And I did it, smiling through the absurdity because I'd learned the hard way. The minute you stop serving, they stop seeing you. By 30, I had everything I'd dreamed of. A successful restaurant, a loyal team, and a Michelin whisper that never quite materialized, but was flattering enough to keep me going. But inside, there was still that 9-year-old girl with the empty lunchbox. Still that ache of hearing. Family only. The difference now? The girl had a kitchen full of knives and an impeccable sense of timing. And when the moment came, when I saw that Instagram post about the anniversary dinner I wasn't invited to, every memory from the last 20-something years clicked into place like puzzle pieces made of pure irony. Because for decades, I'd been told to stay out of the kitchen of family affairs. So now I was going to build my own. And this time, everyone would know exactly whose table they weren't sitting at. There are 2 kinds of phone calls that ruin a perfectly good morning. Telemarketers and mothers who open with, "Sweetheart, don't be mad." Mine was the latter. It was a Thursday, 1 week after the great anniversary exclusion incident, and I was at the restaurant early, rearranging menus that didn't need rearranging. The espresso machine was hissing in the background when Mom's name flashed on my phone. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Savannah," she sang, the way people say your name when they're about to assign you unpaid labor. "Your father and I were just talking about Thanksgiving." I leaned on the counter. "Let me guess, you're switching to takeout this year?" A tiny pause. "Oh, you're such a kidder." "No, we thought we'd keep it traditional. Just a few close friends and family. Very intimate." "Uh-huh. How intimate? Well, she said carefully, 25. I choked on air. 25? It was supposed to be 18, she continued. Like that made it reasonable. But your sister's inviting Trevor's boss and his wife, and your father thought it would be nice to have the neighbors. Oh, and Aunt Lila offered to bring wine. So of course she's coming too. I pressed my thumb against my temple. Mom, that's not intimate. That's catering. Oh, you're such a professional, she said brightly. Which is perfect, because we'd love your help. I closed my eyes. There it was. The ask. The annual small favor that required a team of chefs and a forklift. Mom, I said, I work 70 hours a week. Thanksgiving is literally my only day off. I know, darling, but you're so good at it. And you always say cooking relaxes you. Cooking relaxes me, I said, when I'm not feeding a small village. She laughed. You're exaggerating. Oh, and before I forget, no garlic this year. You know how I get. Right, no garlic, I muttered, already bracing myself. And your father still can't stand olives or mushrooms. We don't want him making faces again. Of course not. And Vanessa's still allergic to nuts, poor thing. Obviously. Oh, and maybe skip the beans. They don't photograph well. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it, as if the sheer power of disbelief could melt it into silence. When I brought it back, she was still talking. And something festive for dessert, but not too sweet. Trevor's boss is doing keto. I took a deep breath. So just to confirm, you're asking me to cook Thanksgiving dinner for 25 people, with no garlic, no olives, no mushrooms, no nuts, no beans, and no sugar. Exactly, she chirped. You always understand me. Mom, that's not a menu, that's a cry for help. She laughed again, oblivious. You're such a comedian. We'll cover the groceries, of course. I let that sink in. The groceries. Not the labor, not the 10-hour prep, not the cost of sanity, but just the groceries. Fine, I said finally. But I'm choosing the wine. Oh, wonderful. Vanessa will love that. Click. I stood in the middle of the restaurant for a long minute, staring at my reflection in the front window. Hair pulled back, apron dusted with flour, a woman who had built her own kingdom from scratch and was somehow still being voluntold to serve as the family maid. Laura walked in balancing a crate of herbs. You look like someone just canceled Christmas. Worse, I said. Someone just assigned me Thanksgiving. Again? 25 people. Dietary restrictions that make no biological sense. And apparently I'm thrilled about it. She grinned. You going to do it? Oh, I'm going to do it, I said slowly. But not the way they expect. Her eyebrows lifted. Should I be concerned? Not unless you're allergic to irony. The next day, Vanessa called. Of course she did. Hey, Sav, she said, in that falsely casual tone that meant she'd already made a spreadsheet. So, Mom said you're handling Thanksgiving this year. That's amazing. Handling, I repeated, like a zookeeper handles tigers. She laughed. You're so funny. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a heads up on the guest list. There are a few updates. I groaned. How many now? 27, she said. But maybe 28 if Uncle Nate's girlfriend confirms. Who's Uncle Nate dating? Some woman named Meryl. She does yoga, super into raw food. Perfect, I said. I'll serve her an empty plate. Vanessa gasped. Sav. Relax, I'm kidding. Mostly. Okay, so Mom's thinking buffet style, but with formal place settings, obviously. And we'll need a vegetarian option, but nothing with tofu because it grosses Dad out. Oh, and could you do that cranberry chutney again? Everyone loved it last year. Everyone's, meaning you and Mom. Well, we're important people, she said brightly. I stared at the phone. Vanessa, remind me, what exactly are you contributing this year? I'm organizing everything, she said proudly. Invites, table decor, playlists, the hard stuff. Right, the hard stuff. I wondered if she'd sprain her wrist from all that event management. When we hung up, I sat in silence for a full minute, then opened my notebook and wrote at the top of a blank page, the lesson. The following days were a blur of logistics. I met with suppliers, scheduled deliveries, and fielded last-minute suggestions from Mom. Do we really need butter? It's so heavy. And Vanessa, maybe you could make it more Instagrammable? Meanwhile, Dad texted me a thumbs up emoji every morning, as if moral support could peel potatoes. By Monday, the guest count was officially 25. I'd seen the list. Half were family, the rest, important connections, Trevor's boss, Dad's golf buddies, the neighbor with the fancy Tesla. Basically, a lineup of people who would eat politely and gossip aggressively. I built a menu that would survive the restrictions. It was elegant, creative, and about as joyful as a tax audit. Roasted turkey with citrus glaze. Mashed sweet potatoes, no butter for the keto guest. Cranberry sauce, strained to remove visible fruit because texture. A bean-free salad. Garlic-free gravy. It looked like Thanksgiving on paper and sadness on a plate. Still, I cooked. Because that's what I do. I make the impossible edible. By Wednesday night, the house was a war zone. Boxes of produce filled the counters, the fridge was crammed with labeled trays, and I was running on caffeine and contempt. Vanessa hovered behind me, taking photos for her holiday aesthetic post. "Sav, smile," she said, snapping a picture mid-based. "You look so professional when you're focused." "I'm thinking about homicide," I said through a smile. She laughed like I was kidding. Mom floated in wearing pearls and panic. "Oh, darling, this looks divine. You're such a blessing. Now tomorrow, remember dinner starts at 4 sharp, but guests will probably arrive by 3. "Got it. And we'll need appetizers ready by then. Nothing too spicy, though." "Of course. And please, no mushrooms near your father's seat. You remember what happened last time." "I do," I said. "He made a scene over the risotto." Mom sighed dreamily. "He's so sensitive." I stared at her. That's one word for it. Thanksgiving morning arrived like an unwanted sequel. The doorbell rang at 10. Aunt Lila, punctual as ever, carrying 2 bottles of fancy wine she'd bought on sale. "Savvy," she cried, hugging me while I held a raw turkey. "You look exhausted." "Thank you," I said. "It's the glow of being taken for granted." By noon, the house was chaos. The doorbell didn't stop. People streamed in with their emotional baggage and side dishes no one wanted. Vanessa directed traffic like a wedding planner on espresso. "Sav, could you move the appetizers to the left table? It photographs better." Mom was in the living room, greeting guests and pretending she'd single-handedly orchestrated the entire event. Dad stood by the bar, already sipping whiskey, telling Trevor's boss that Savannah runs a cute little restaurant downtown. Cute! My restaurant seats 80 and has a 6-month wait list. By 2 o'clock, I was sweating, starving, and one bad comment, away from using the carving knife for something therapeutic. That's when it happened, the moment that sealed it. Vanessa walked in, clapping her manicured hands. "Everything looks amazing. Oh, by the way, we added 2 more chairs." "2?" I said. "For who?" "Trevor's boss brought his assistant and her boyfriend. Isn't that fun?" "Fun," I repeated. "Yes, like a dental procedure." She didn't hear me. She was too busy rearranging the centerpiece. I looked around the room, the laughing guests, the over-decorated table, my parents basking in compliments they hadn't earned. And me, the invisible engine making it all work. Something inside me went very still. Not angry, not even tired. Just done. Later, as I basted the turkey one final time, Vanessa hovered behind me again. "You're quiet," she said. "Everything okay?" I turned the turkey pan slowly, watching the glaze shimmer under the light. Perfect, I said. Everything's absolutely perfect. She smiled, relieved. You're amazing, Sav. Seriously, I don't know how you do it. Neither do I said. And I meant it. Because somewhere between the phone call and the 27th guest, something had shifted. The same kitchen that had always been my refuge had become my stage. And tomorrow, for once, I wasn't just going to cook dinner. I was going to serve a reminder. That night, after everyone left and the house went quiet, I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the sticky counters and half-empty wine glasses. My hands still smelled like citrus and smoke. The leftovers filled the fridge, labeled and stacked with surgical precision. Mom's laughter still echoed faintly from down the hall. Vanessa's playlist hummed from the living room, the kind of cheerful acoustic nonsense that makes you want to bite something. I leaned on the counter and exhaled. Tomorrow, they'd sit down, confident that I'd once again pulled off the impossible. A flawless dinner, a selfless performance. And I would. Just not the kind they expected. I opened my notebook and wrote 3 words across the page. Teach. Them. Taste. The pen tip dug into the paper. I smiled. The slow, quiet kind that starts in the chest and works its way to the eyes. For years, I'd been serving love, patience, or forgiveness, always seasoned, just right, always palatable. This time, I'd serve something new. A dish best enjoyed hot, and with a generous drizzle of poetic justice. Thanksgiving morning began with the kind of quiet that makes you suspicious. The house was still. The oven lights glowed like 2 tired eyes. The air smelled faintly of citrus and roasted bones, a calm before the compliments. I tied my apron, checked the time, 7:11 a.m., and opened my notebook. Last night's 3 words stared back at me. Teach. Them. Taste. Not punish, not hurt, not even starve. Teach. I'd prepped most of it already. Today was execution, the elegant endgame. And if you're picturing me in a villain monologue, relax. I wasn't planning to twirl a mustache and kick the family corgi. I was going to do what I do best. Cook. Honestly, beautifully, unapologetically, and clearly. At 7:30, my phone pinged. Vanessa. Morning, don't hate me. Trevor's boss is bringing his cousin. 26? Me. Noted. Vanessa. You're a saint. Also, reminder. Mom hates beans and garlic, Dad hates olives and mushrooms, and me. Vanessa, I'm going to say this once so there's no confusion. Me. Some dishes today will contain peanuts, not just traces. Actually included. You cannot eat them. Vanessa. OMG. Okay, thank you for telling me. I'll avoid those. Me. I'll label everything clearly. Vanessa. You're the best. I'll bring place cards. I set the phone down. Good. The ground rules were in writing, no ambiguity. No drama later, at least the non-medical kind. I slipped on heat-proof gloves, pulled the turkey to temperature, and began the final dance of glazing and basting. The glaze was bright with mandarin peel and, brace yourself, roasted garlic. Not overpowering, not crude. Just enough to coax the turkey out of bland tradition and into adulthood. I was not cooking for my mother's nose today. I was cooking for 26 palates that deserved a memory. And because I am not, in fact, a monster, I made 1-second turkey breast, small, discreet, lovingly roasted without garlic, labeled plainly turkey, no garlic. It would sit on the far end of the buffet like Switzerland. Neutral, boring, safe. Everything else? It would sing in full voice. I whisked the cranberry chutney, tart, jeweled, restless under the spoon, with toasted orange zest and a whisper of olive brine to pull the sweetness into focus. Tiny bits of porcini anchored the gravy, smoothed out with a touch of cream and a reduction that took 3 hours and my last ounce of patience. For the greens, I let myself play. Charred broccolini with shaved Castelvetrano olives and lemon. A salad of crisp apples, shaved fennel, and yes, Marcona almonds. Not a mountain of nuts, not a booby trap. A normal, fabulous salad, as common in Los Angeles as unsolicited screenplay pitches. And then there were the sweet potatoes, silk with a browned butter pecan streusel. Because the dessert table would feature a star. I've wanted to serve my family for a decade and never could. Peanut butter silk pie with a black cocoa crust. The smell alone made me close my eyes. Every pan, every platter, every pastry carried a small, clean label I'd printed on cream card and slid into tiny stands. Turkey with citrus and roasted garlic. Turkey, no garlic. Porcini gravy, contains mushroom, dairy. Cranberry olive chutney, contains olive. Charred broccolini with lemon and castelvetrano, contains olive. Apple fennel salad, contains almonds. Sweet potatoes with browned butter pecan streusel, contains tree nuts. Peanut butter silk pie, contains peanuts, dairy. Chocolate olive oil cake, contains olive oil. And at the very front of the buffet, a framed card, big enough for my father to read without his readers. Ingredient disclosure. Today's menu showcases full flavors, including garlic, olives, mushrooms, beans, and peanuts. If you avoid any of these, please choose labeled alternatives, e.g. turkey no garlic, plain rolls, butter, sparkling water. Savannah Clear. Honest, safe, and wickedly gorgeously free. By 10 o'clock, I'd cut fruit, set cheeses, warmed bread. I laid a small basket of plain rolls beside salted butter and a pitcher of sparkling water. The Switzerland station, as Laura had christened it yesterday, howling. If my parents and Vanessa chose a meal of bubbles and bread, that would be their decision. Their taste, their choice, their consequence. At 11:30, the doorbell began its hour-long solo. Guests poured in, exclaiming over the smell of holidays and clinking their gratitude in the hallway. Vanessa swept through it all like a blonde metronome, tapping place cards into position and hugging everyone as if she'd personally harvested the cranberries. "Sav," she sang, catching me at the kitchen pass. "Everything looks gorgeous. Should I put the pies out now, or what's this?" She'd stopped at the framed disclosure. Her expression tightened by 2 millimeters. "Oh," I wiped my hands. "We're doing clear labeling this year, keeps things simple." I touched the bottom of the frame with one finger so she'd see the peanuts line. "You saw my text?" She nodded quickly, eyes darting to the peanut pie like it was smirking at her. "Yeah, thanks for the warning. I brought my EpiPen just in case, but I'll stay 100 miles away from that one." "Good. I also made a chocolate olive oil cake. It's lush. No nuts at all." She brightened. "You're the best." I didn't say, "I know." I just turned to the turkey and brushed on one last gloss of glaze. Mom appeared in the doorway, pearls gleaming, cheeks already wine-flushed. "Darling, what is that smell?" It's something." Her nose twitched. "Please tell me it's not—" "Garlic," I said gently, turning the breast. "And also mushrooms in the gravy, and olives in the chutney and greens." She froze, a portrait of offended delicacy. "Savannah." "Yes?" "We spoke about this." "We did," I said. "Which is why there's a turkey no garlic option and plain rolls." I pointed to the Switzerland station. "You're covered." Mom blinked, processing the idea that her preferences would not control the room. "You think I'm going to eat bread and water on Thanksgiving?" "You could add butter," I said helpfully. "Or sparkling water. With a twist." Her mouth opened, closed. The pearls tried to vibrate off her neck. Dad stepped in behind her, sniffing appreciatively. "That bird smells like a parade." He peered at the labels. "What's this? Porcini gravy?" "Oh, mushrooms. No thank you." He winked at me. "I'll stick to the no garlic turkey, and where's the— rolls." Trevor slid an arm around Vanessa, kissed her temple, and peered at the buffet like a talent scout. "This is insane, Sav. Michelin level. If I weren't married to the family I'd propose." "Get in line," I said. "The peanut pie's already taken." Vanessa elbowed him. "Not funny." I caught her eye. "I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to be clear." She nodded once, solemn this time. "I get it. Thank you." Guests began to drift toward the table in that flocking movement crowds do when food becomes inevitable. Dad clapped his hands. All right, folks. Before we eat, a word from our in-house genius. I wanted to say, our in-house genius has a lease and a liquor license and pays payroll taxes. Instead, I smiled and stepped forward, wiping one non-existent crumb from my apron. Happy Thanksgiving, I said. Today's menu was built around full flavors. Not compromised, not disguised. The way food tastes when it's allowed to be itself. A polite murmur. Every dish is clearly labeled with ingredients that might be deal breakers for some. Garlic, mushrooms, olives, beans, peanuts. If any of those are a no for you, there are safe options. If not, I hope you'll taste everything. I cooked with both hands. A soft ripple of laughter. Please enjoy. Trevor's boss, tan, toothy, beloved by golfers everywhere, lifted his glass. To Savannah, the only reason I RSVP'd to car events. To Savannah, echoed the room, and yes, even Mom managed a brittle smile around her stemware. We opened the buffet. And then the music started, the kind you hear only in kitchens and dream sequences. Clinks, sighs, the sound a crowd makes when roasted skin cracks under the knife, when gravy hits starch, when citrus and salt wake up a room. The turkey went first. The garlic turkey. People inhaled, moaned, nodded in that human metronome of pleasure that says, this matters. I saw hands go back for second spoonfuls of porcini gravy, eyes widen at the olive-bright cranberry. One woman actually clutched the broccolini plate to her chest like a rescued pet. Across the room, Mom stood at Switzerland Station, gently buttering a roll as if it had personally wronged her. Dad carved a slice from the neutral turkey, then hovered on the edge of the action like a man locked out of his own party. Vanessa kept a cautious distance from anything labeled nuts, nibbling chocolate cake in thin, neat bites. She looked fine. She was fine. Cleared, warned, adult choices made. Exactly as planned. Savannah, someone said near my ear, the neighbor with the Tesla. This cranberry situation, I need to be alone with it. It's the olives, I said. Olives? In cranberry? You're a criminal. I accept your sentence. Aunt Lila arrived for her blessing like a TV judge. Savvy, whatever you did to that turkey, do it to me when I die so I smell this good on the way up. She glanced at Mom's roll plate, lowered her voice. She'll crack by dessert. I made a peanut butter pie, I said. She won't crack. Lila winked. Then she'll crumble. As the room settled into that happy hum of synchronized chewing, I watched the pocket of stiltness at the far end of the table. My parents, my sister. A tiny island of principle and palate, drifting in a sea of joy. Were they hungry? Possibly. Were they safe? Absolutely. Were they learning anything? I didn't know yet. Lessons sometimes take the length of a meal to land. Dad tried to get clever, edging his fork toward the gravy, then pulled back at the last second like a man reconsidering a tattoo. Mom took microscopic bites of her roll, expression composed, eyes traveling the table with anthropological interest, as if these eaters were a species newly discovered. Vanessa made peace with a chocolate cake, then added a scoop of plain whipped cream and gave me a thumbs up from across the room. I'm okay. Her mouth shaped. Good. Trevor came back for seconds. I'm taking a personal day tomorrow so I can eat this again. Generous, I said. Also, my boss thinks you're a genius, he added, as if I collected compliments from men in suits as currency. He wants your card. He can stand in line at the restaurant like everyone else. Trevor grinned. Chefs terrify me, in a good way. Good, I said. Keep that energy. Plates emptied, refilled. The turkey dwindled. The no-garlic breast looked barely touched. A decoy, dignified in its isolation. The peanut pie developed a fan club that made reverent murmurs and exchanged numbers like they'd survived something together. The olive oil cake disappeared in slow, admiring bites. people pausing to puzzle out the depth they couldn't name. In the kitchen, I leaned against the counter for the smallest minute and let the warmth climb back into my fingers. The plan worked because it wasn't a trick. It was honesty with garnish. It was refusing to shrink the world because 3 people disliked its flavors. It was relief. Savannah. I turned. Mom stood in the doorway, clutching a napkin like a white flag. Up close, she looked less brittle, more human. The steam had softened her edges. Yes? That chocolate cake was lovely, she said. Moist without being heavy. A beat. I tasted a crumb. Thank you, I said. It's olive oil instead of butter. Her mouth twitched. I could tell something was different. She glanced toward the dining room where Trevor's boss was asking for the gravy boat with the hunger of a pilgrim. People are very enthusiastic. They're eating, I said simply. It's allowed. Mom's eyes flicked to the framed disclosure. You made it very clear. That was the point. She looked at me for a long second. You could have done the whole thing another way. You could have hidden the flavors or made everything plain. I could have, I said, but that would have taught the wrong lesson, which is that other people's preferences shouldn't starve a room. Her jaw shifted. I don't like garlic, Savannah. I know, I said softly. That's why there was a no garlic option. You had a choice. For once, so did everyone else. She glanced down, then back up, and to my shock, a small, unwilling smile tugged one corner of her mouth. You always did have a flair for presentation. I'm a chef. Yes, she said. Yes, you are. We stood there in a rare pocket of truce until Dad ambled in, tapping his plate with his fork like a polite prisoner. Any chance that gravy has a cousin? One without, you know. No, I said gently. But there's pan juice from the no garlic breast. It's clean. He sighed dramatically, took the small pitcher I offered, and drove his fork through a slice of neutral turkey like a man doing chores. It's good, he said after a bite. It's fine. Fine's legal, I said. He squinted at me. You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying watching people enjoy my food, I said. Including you, whenever you choose to. He stared down at his plate, then out toward the dining room, where laughter hiccuped and swelled, and someone said my name with caramel in their voice. He swallowed. Olives in the cranberry, who would have thought? Me? I said. He huffed, almost a laugh. Yeah, you. Vanessa appeared behind them, cautious as a cat approaching thunder. I'm good, she said before I could ask. Cake was amazing. I also had salad greens with nothing on them, and like 6 rolls. I'm carb shining. I saw, I said. You did great. She nodded, eyes glassy with embarrassment or gratitude. I couldn't tell. Thank you for making it so clear, she added quietly. For, not trying to test me. Vanessa, I said, you're my sister. The goal is to teach, not to scare. That landed somewhere it needed to. She pressed her lips together, nodded, and slipped back to the dining room, where Trevor draped a napkin over her lap like he'd invented the gesture. When dessert made its second lap, a guest in a velvet blazer approached, wiping a happy tear. Chef, she said, putting a hand over her heart. You made me like mushrooms. Porcini tend to have that effect, I said. No, she insisted. You did. I accepted the compliment with the grace of a woman who has practiced for it in mirrors she cleaned herself. By 5 o'clock it was done. Plates stacked, compliments banked. The room that had built walls around its dislikes now hummed with the memory of being fed fully. People left in slow bursts, hugging me with the familiarity of a cousin they wished they had. Next year you cater mine, someone said. What's the secret to that turkey? Another begged. Hands, I said. Both of them. The house thinned to family. The hum faded to the soft, post-feast quiet, the auditory equivalent of messy hair. I stood at the sink, running hot water over a roasting pan, when I felt the room gather itself. I turned. Mom, Dad, Vanessa, in a little triangle like a family crest with hands. Savannah, Mom started, then stopped. Dad nodded at nothing. Vanessa bit her lip. This was the part in a movie where the heartfelt music swells and everyone apologizes in crisp, well-written sentences. Real life is quieter and clumsier. I waited. Mom took a breath. You cooked beautifully, she said. People were happy. Thank you, I said. It was hard to sit out, Dad admitted. I knew it would be. It was still hard. I told you in advance, I said. You chose. He nodded once, accepting the contract he'd signed with pride and appetite. Vanessa shifted. I kept thinking about that text, she said. How you said, some dishes will contain peanuts, not traces. Actually included. She blew out a tiny laugh. It was, I don't know, respectful? It was the truth, I said. I trust you to keep yourself safe. You're not a child. She smiled crookedly. Sometimes I act like one. Same, I said. On Tuesdays. We stood there, 3 satellites that had spent years pretending the same orbit, letting the invisible gravity recalculate. Finally, Mom's voice went small. We did not invite you to our anniversary dinner, she said, as if the sentence were a foreign object she had to pass. It was unkind. Yes, I said. The word landed, clean and light. I'm sorry, she said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't packaged in bows or excuses. It was simply true. Vanessa swallowed. I'm sorry, too. I thought... She stopped. I didn't think. Dad looked at me, eyes crinkled by decades. You did a big thing today. Not just the cooking. I rested my hands on the edge of the sink. I did the same thing I always do. I set a table. I told the truth. We heard it, Mom said. I nodded. Good. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was one of those rare breaths a family takes together when they realize they might be capable of change. Help us clean? Dad said weakly, half a joke, half habit. No, I said, and smiled. You can handle it. Bread plates are light. He laughed, actually laughed, then handed me a dish towel anyway when I reached for it 5 seconds later because apparently I'm congenitally incapable of watching someone else stack a dishwasher wrong. When the last glass clinked into place and the counters gleamed again, I stepped outside onto the back patio. The evening had gone the color of clementines. Somewhere a neighbor's radio played a song from high school that made me want to commit minor crimes. Mom followed me out. She stood at the edge of the light, not quite in shadow, hands tucked in her sleeves. Next year, she said very quietly, we set 7 places, whether you can come or not. I looked at her. 7? 1 for you, she said, and 2 extra. For whoever you bring. Or no one. But a place for you is set. She lifted a shoulder. In case you choose to come. A place set in my absence. Not as an afterthought, but as policy. I felt something in my chest rearrange itself. Some small, stubborn knot loosening just enough to let blood pass. Okay, I said. Thank you. She nodded. And if you cook, she added, a ghost of a smile, we will adapt. I blew out a laugh. We? Your father will adapt, she corrected. I will eat the chocolate cake. Deal. She reached for my hand, squeezed it once, and went inside to find her pearls. I stood there for a moment longer, breathing in the grocery store orange scent of the sky. The house behind me hummed with domestic noises, the weird, humble applause of plates returning to shelves and chairs, scraping toward rest. Inside, the turkey no garlic waited in its quiet corner, mostly uneaten but not unloved, a symbol of what compromise looks like when it's an option, not a law. Someone slid open the door. Vanessa stepped out, holding two paper boats like she'd stolen them from a food truck. Peace offering? I peered in. Chocolate olive oil cake, 2 slices, layered with a smear of whipped cream and a single rebellious olive slice perched on mine like an inside joke. I burst out laughing. She looked panicked. Too far? It's perfect, I said, and took the fork. We ate leaning against the railing, sisters in a temporary ceasefire, listening to the distant sound of someone in the neighborhood setting off illegal fireworks because gratitude is apparently more explosive with gunpowder. Sav? She said finally. Did you enjoy any of that? Most of it, I said. Especially the part where no one died and everyone learned something. Same, she said. Especially the no one died part. We finished the cake. She licked a smear of cream off her thumb, then caught herself and wiped it on the napkin because growth is messy and also sticky. Inside, Dad called for help finding the good Tupperware. Mom told him to use the bad Tupperware because no one returns the good Tupperware, and he said, defeated, "Why do we own good Tupperware then?" A lullaby, honestly. I gathered my things, my knives, my notebook, the framed disclosure that had done more emotional labor than most therapists. At the front door, I looked back at the table. Candles guttering, plates stacked like white coins, the room arranged again into something you could live in. Trevor appeared from nowhere and hugged me with the zeal of a man who'd just eaten 2 Thanksgiving dinners. "Marry me," he whispered dramatically. Vanessa threw a dish towel at his head. "Good night," I said, and stepped into the kind of November night Los Angeles does when it's trying to apologize for rent. Cool, forgiving, a little soft around the edges. In the car, I sat for a minute in the kind of silence you only get after a successful service or a decision you know you'll never regret. I texted Laura. They loved it. Parents ate bread. Lesson absorbed, I think. No casualties. Peanut pie, iconic. She responded with 17 chef's knives and a single crown. I started the engine, pulled away, and watched the house shrink in the rear view, the porch light winking like a conspirator. Everyone had eaten, even those who chose not to. Everyone was safe. Everyone had a story to tell. And me? I had a new holiday tradition. No dimming, full flavor, clear labels. Some families pass recipes down. Mine will pass warning cards. Either way, we're going to eat honestly from now on. And if next year there's an extra chair with my name card set, whether I walk through the door or not, well, that's how you know the lesson took.